I have to play it cool. I have to play it cool. They can't know. I'm gonna give everything away if I don't play it cool. I was able to play it cool with like secrets and plot twists and Throne of Glass, but like this is the plot twist. This is the twist. Welcome back to part 2 of my ACOTAR recap. I'm excited to jump into this part because this is where I think things start to get interesting. So excited to jump into today's video. We're meeting someone fun. This video. I'm trying to do this series without spoilers, so if you're like following along, you can follow along and not get spoiled, but like, man, it's hard. Hi, later Nesta coming to you first to give you a summary of the first video because I realized I didn't do it at the top of the actual video. I wanted to give you a summary and also to let you know that if you didn't watch the first video, if this is your first video here with me, I don't think you need to go back and watch the first one. Of course, I'm delightful in it, obviously, but like nothing really happens that first video. Sometimes I think I forget how boring ACOTAR is. Like the book ACOTAR, because like the series holds such a special place in my heart, but like really ACOTAR doesn't get super good until the last third. This third is definitely better. Spoiler for the video that you're currently watching. Rhys will be here, and that is a good time for everyone. Everyone's excited by this. Everyone's excited. He's such a fun little villain. Anyway, so that does make things a little bit more exciting. Next video is going to be like so poppin' though. Under the Mountain. Not to get you like too excited for the next video, but it's going to be a good one. Anyway, if this is your first video, here's what happened in the last video. I will recap it for you so you don't have to go back and watch it if you don't want to. 1, Miss Feyre, our main heroine girly, she was hunting in the forest because she had to feed her family. Her family, poor now because of stuff. They're poor. She's out there hunting. She kills this wolf. The wolf happens to be a fairy. Tamlin, a fairy guy, comes and is like, hey, you killed my friend. Now you have to come live with me in the spring court. And she's like, okay, this seems like a weird punishment. I just get to live in this manor and paint all day, and you've made my family wealthy. This seems like maybe the strangest punishment that's ever been a punishment. But all right, she agrees. For a while, she's like, I want to go back to my house. And then she's like, actually, I kind of like it here. And that's where we leave. That's where we leave them. That's what's happened. Before we get into things, time for some self-promo. This video is not sponsored by anyone, so we're going to let it be sponsored by me. We're going to pretend that I'm the sponsor of my own video. Captain of my own destiny, sponsor of my own video. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to talk to you about something that's important to me. And that is my second book is finally like live on all of the places that books are available. And also there's a Goodreads giveaway going on. My second novel, The Forest of Missing Girls, comes out in November. But right now, if you go on Goodreads, there is a giveaway happening. If you're like doing it right when you're watching this video. And I think it should be going on for like the next week, maybe a couple weeks. All you have to do is add the book to your want to be read shelf, and you'll be entered to win a copy of it. How exciting. I will leave links down below. The Forest of Missing Girls is like a horror novel, but like please trust me when I say this is like baby horror to some extent, okay? Like I get spooked watching horror movie trailers. Like if I'm gonna watch a horror movie, I'm gonna read the Wikipedia page first so I can know when all the jump scares happen, so I can like prepare myself emotionally. Like this is not going to scare your pants off probably, but it is a little spooky-ooky. I would say if I was gonna like describe this in terms of other things, I would say it's like the movie The Substance with Debbie Moore meets like a fairy tale, like Hansel and Gretel. So we've got this like spooky forest, girls are going missing, something's happening. This young woman returns to her childhood home, which is like in this forest. And one of the first nights she's home, her sister's best friend disappears, like out of their backyard. And it's just one of like a string of teenage girls who have gone missing over the course of like decades. And as she starts to kind of like dig into what might be happening with this forest, she realizes there might be more than she initially imagined. The forest has a lot of secrets, and her mother may know more than she's letting on. And it will be out in November, so perfect for the fall season. Links to enter the Goodreads giveaway and to pre-order the book, if you feel so inclined, will be down below. Okay, exciting. Now let's get into ACOTAR Part 2, which we're starting with Chapter 17. Feyre wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of Lucien and Tamlin like shouting downstairs, and she's like, what the heck's going on? So she comes down the stairs to investigate, and she sees Tamlin is carrying this fairy with like bright blue skin, and he is bleeding like profusely from these like blackened stumps on his back. And they like clear off the dining room table and they put him, and we learn pretty quickly that he was dumped just across the border, but he's from Summer Court. He's not a spring court guy from Lucian. Lucian explains that. And the blue guy is just like crying, my wings, she took my wings. And he's just repeating it like again and again. And again, Feyre clocks that it's this mysterious she that Tamlin and Lucian keep talking about, but like not explaining. Feyre has like come over to the table now, and he's like thrashing about. Tamlin's asking him to hold still. Feyre winds up like pinning him to the table, and even though he's like bleeding a lot, he's so strong that she's like having to use her entire strength to like keep him there. And again, Tamlin is like, you need to stay still so I can like try to help you, and also like you're bleeding. The more you move around, the more it like makes you bleed, because it makes your heart beat faster, I think. I don't know why I was like, I need to explain the science to these people. Tamlin's trying to stop the bleeding, but it isn't working. He's like bleeding too much. And Feyre's like, can't you use your magic to like prevent, like to stop this? And Tamlin says, not for this much damage. And then Feyre takes the hand of the blue fairy, because it's become clear, like Feyre and Tamlin have exchanged a look. It's become clear that this blue fairy will not survive this, that this is going to be a life-ending injury. And as he is like crying and again saying, she took my wings, Feyre holds his hand and she says to him, it will be all right. You'll get them back. And the blue fairy says, you swear? And Feyre says, yes. And then Tamlin says this like prayer over him. Cauldron save you, mother hold you. Pass through the gates and smell that immortal land of milk and honey. Fear no evil, feel no pain. Go and enter eternity. This scene actually does make me like a little emotional, a little teary. We're not starting the cry count yet. Throne of Glass girls know that I am a crier. But this does kind of like get me a little choked up. It's really like kind of a sweet moment, because then he does die on the table as like Feyre holds his hand. And after he's like stilled and has clearly like passed away, Tamlin leads Feyre back upstairs, and they leave like a trail of like bloody footprints behind them, because like, and Feyre's like, we can't just like leave him on the kitchen table. Where are we gonna eat breakfast? And Tamlin says, I know, I'm gonna go deal with it. I just like wanted you to walk you back to bed first, and then I'm gonna go deal with this. And Feyre like offers to help, but he's like, no, I must do this alone. And then before Feyre can go to bed, Tamlin asks her why she held that fairy's hand if she hates the Fae so much. And Feyre says, because I wouldn't want to die alone. Because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end, and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy. I regret what I did to Andras, and I regret that there was such hate in my heart. I wish I could undo it. And I'm sorry. So very sorry. Tamlin doesn't respond. He just like nods and turns away, and Feyre watches as he goes back to the table, scoops up the body, and heads into the gardens. The next day, when Feyre comes downstairs, all the blood is cleaned up, and Tamlin appears when she comes downstairs after breakfast, I don't know, some point, and asks her to come riding with him. And he and Lucian wind up taking her and Feyre to what she describes as the most beautiful place I'd ever been to. It is this like grassy hill that's covered in wildflowers, overlooking this like beautiful glade of oaks. And TimTam brought them a little picnic basket and like a little picnic blanket, and they're like spread out on the blanket, and Lucian is in the back third wheeling, and Tamlin and Feyre like chat, mostly ignoring Lucian. Lucian is here for this scene, but like they really don't talk to him very much. Feyre asks Tamlin, what is this place? And Tamlin says, just a glen. Do you like it? And Feyre says, yes. That's it? Says Tamlin. Feyre, would you like me to grovel with gratitude for you bringing me here, High Lord? And then Tamlin says, the Suriel told you nothing important, did he? Feyre, he also said that you liked being brushed, and that if I'm a clever girl, I might train you with treats. Tamlin laughs, and Lucian's like, oh my gosh, Feyre made a joke. Lucian is really under the impression that Feyre has never had a moment of humor in her life. I just like truly believe in my heart of hearts that Nesta, although mean, was also probably hilarious. I feel like mean people are often funny. Also, Feyre's funny. Like, I don't need anyone else around to make myself giggle. I've giggled in the worst of times. Anyway, don't love the implication that like they've gifted her laughter. Then Tamlin takes her down the hill towards this pool that like looks like shimmering starlight, and Feyre says that, and Tamlin's like, oh, well, it is starlight. Do you want to go swimming? And Feyre initially doesn't want to, and asks about like Lucian and like how he's holding up. He seemed like very unwell after what happened the night before with that fairy. He had thrown up and like had to leave the room after seeing that fairy so injured. And Tamlin explains that like he's probably seen worse, but it was probably like really kind of triggering for him essentially, because of him remembering like what it was like when he lost his eye. And then he goes on to explain that Lucian is the youngest son of the Autumn Court, and that it's like a very cutthroat place. And he goes on to explain kind of the story of what happened to Lucien. Lucien fell in love with a fairy whom his father considered to be grossly inappropriate for someone of his bloodline. Lucien said he didn't care that she wasn't one of the High Fae, that he was certain that a mating bond would snap into place, and that soon he was going to marry her and leave his father's court to his scheming brothers. His father had her put down, executed, in front of Lucien, as his 2 eldest brothers held him and made him watch. And after that, Lucien fled to the Spring Court, where he met up with Tamlin. And then when his brothers came for him to retrieve him to bring him back to Autumn Court, Tamlin and Lucien killed 2 of the brothers and let one head back to Autumn Court to report on what happened. And then they turn back to the pool, and Tamlin says there's this myth that if you drink the starlight from the pool, you'll be happy forever. And Feyre's like, I would need to drink the whole thing in order to be happy forever. But then she does agree to swim, and Tamlin is kind of impressed that she knows how to swim. And she's like, well, I taught myself how to swim by just watching the other kids at the pond. Okay. And then she tells the full story of her father and what happened with him. He was the Prince of Merchants, which is a title he inherited from his father, but really it was kind of a lie the whole time. They just really had a family history of having these huge debts and just kind of passing them along. And when an opportunity arose for Feyre's father to pay off those debts, he took it, even though it was clearly very ill-advised. He took a ship to Barat, got another loan to take the ship to Barat because he knew he was going to make enough profit on this journey to pay back the loan and also pay off some of his other debts. But they took a dangerous shortcut because they were on a really tight timeline. And when those ships sank, his creditors came and broke his legs. Tamlin was like, wow, that's crazy. Certainly you weren't out of money immediately. And Feyre explains that it was 3 years after that they were totally destitute, and she'd started hunting then. So when she was 14, she started hunting. The timeline of Feyre's childhood: when she's 8, her mother dies. When she's 11, she watches her father's legs be broken, and they essentially start their descent into poverty. And by the time she's 14, they're completely destitute, essentially just living off of what Feyre can hunt for them. On the ride back to the manor, she tells Lucien, she waits till Tamlin is a little ways off, and she's talking to Lucien, and she says, oh my gosh, thanks for the advice about the Suriel. If you wanted me dead, you're gonna have to try harder next time, because clearly Lucien kind of was trying to set her up with all the stuff that went down with the Suriel. And he's like, that's not even what I was doing. You did murder my friend, so even if it was, I kind of think I would be justified in that, and I wouldn't be devastated if you died. Then Lucien goes on to say, Tamlin told me that your first shot was to save the Suriel. And Feyre says, it seems like the right thing to do. And Lucien's like, I don't think a lot of fairies would have done that, just the same thing. And Lucien confesses that he did hear her scream in the forest, and he hesitated before coming to her rescue, and but he was on his way when Tamlin arrived. So he would have gotten to her, but he did think about it for a second, which is rude. The next day, it's painting time for Feyre. Tamlin's got her supplies, and he's got the gallery all cleaned up. He takes her to this wing of the manor that she's never been to before she walks in the halls of this gallery. The walls in the hallway of this gallery are just completely covered with paintings, and they're paintings in all these different styles, and they're just so beautiful. And she starts to cry. She's overwhelmed with the beauty of this place and a level of beauty that she's never really been exposed to, and she's just weeping. And Tamlin's like, I didn't even know that humans did this. What, Tamlin? You didn't know that humans express joy over beauty? You didn't know that they could be so moved by something that they would cry? What did... Tamlin really does grate on me quite often in this, especially in this read through. I feel like he graded on me less than the initial version, but reading back these things, I'm like, dude, get it together. Anyway, she spends all morning admiring the gallery, and then after lunch, Alice takes her to the room where Tamlin has set up all of her painting supplies, where she is going to be painting. And we kind of learn that she spends the next several days, weeks, I don't know, some time passes, and she's spending all of her days painting. And she doesn't show her work to anyone. She's just painting for herself in this room. And she talks about how a lot of it is not bad and isn't capturing what she wants to capture. Okay, ready for my soapbox? I think there are 2 main camps in the ACOTAR community about Feyre and her painting, which is Feyre a good painter or a bad painter? And I want to say, I'm so firmly in one camp that if Sarah J. Maas herself were to come to me and tell me that I was wrong, I would say, too bad. Too bad. And that is, I think Feyre, in this book in particular, I do think she gets better, but I think in this book, I think she's bad. Why would she be good? I don't think she's the worst that ever existed, but like she has had no time to practice. She's like painted a couple dresser drawers. She like sketched a little as a child. Like I don't think she has like no ability, but she has not had the level of like rigorous practice it takes to become like excellent and great. And I think there was something so important and valuable about letting her be bad at painting initially, that Feyre has spent her whole life really necessarily having to be good at everything she does. If she is not a good hunter, her family will starve to death. If she's not good at negotiating in the market for the prices for the things that she catches, her family will starve to death. Like if she isn't careful, she will die. Right? She puts herself in a lot of precarious situations in which she's doing everything out of necessity and survival, and so she necessarily needs to be good at things. But this is something she does not need to be good at, and she can do simply for the joy of doing it. This is like the first thing she's ever had in her life that is just something that she has done for the joy of it. And like I said, I do believe she gets better. She has like weeks where she's just painting at this manor house, and I do think like with weeks of like dedicated focus and study, and she clearly is really passionate about it, and now she has access to like all these works that she can emulate and just like the space to do so. I do think she improves, but like I do think initially she's probably not that good. She often kind of then also like wanders the grounds of the manor, walking around the gardens. Sometimes Tamlin comes with her and they explore together, but often Tamlin is hunting the spooky ookies and he returns covered in blood. So on those days, obviously she's not hanging out with them. But the manor and the gardens themselves like never have any of those like terrible creatures. And one day, like I think a couple weeks into this, she realizes she hasn't thought about her family like in a few days. It's been a few months now since she's been taken from her home, and she knows that they're safe and they don't really remember her. They have this like, based on what Tamlin has said, he has like taken away the memory of the night she was taken and kind of left them like a vague impression that she's fine. And she thinks about, she's really just been like given all these things as like a distraction to distract her from the fact that she like was kidnapped, like she was taken to this place. And there's like a lot of, I think, grief and realizing that like her family is not mourning her absence, that because of what Tamlin did, like there's no way they really could mourn her absence. And even if he didn't do that, she's not sure if they would have. She doesn't know if she's important to them, and she suspects she isn't. And she has been like very quickly distracted by kind of like the sparkle of this place. And she thinks to herself, I'm no better than the children of the blessed. At dinner, she's like kind of in a crabby mood. And then after dinner, her and Tamlin head to the garden. And Tamlin explains that this rose garden that they're standing in was planted by his father for his mother. And then he says to her, you seem upset. And Feyre says, I don't know why. I feel so tremendously ashamed of myself for leaving them. Why it feels so selfish and horrible to paint. I shouldn't feel that way, should I? I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it. All those years, what I did for them. And they didn't try to stop you from taking me. There it was. The giant pain that cracked me in two if I thought about it for too long. I don't know why I expected them to. Why I believed that the Puka's illusion was real that night. I don't know why I bother still thinking about it or caring. Compared to you, I suppose my self-pity is absurd. And Tamlin like very quickly assures her, like, if it grieves you, I don't think it's absurd at all. And then he like kisses her hand where she has like pricked herself. She is like playing with a rose while she did this, and she like stabbed herself with one of the thorns. And then he says to her, don't feel bad for one moment about doing what brings you joy. And then they talk about a little bit about how Tamlin is like obsessed with this like concept of human joy and like how it interacts with mortality. And then he like kisses her cheek and leaves her with these vaguely ominous words. One day there will be answers for everything, but not until the time is right. Until then, it's safe. Okay. The next day, Feyre heads out to the woods by herself because she's kind of like a little embarrassed. She's still got some like lingering embarrassment over the conversation she had with Tamlin and everything she kind of admitted to Tamlin in that conversation. She brings her bow and her hunting knife, and she ends up setting a little trap and catching Tamlin. She like flips him upside down in this snare trap because she like knew he was following her. Feyre says to him as he's like hanging upside down, that's what you get for stalking someone. And Feyre walks over and starts petting his hair, and then Tamlin starts to purr. That's actually getting me a no for me. And then he frees himself. And Tamlin asks her, are you feeling better today? And Feyre like nods, and Tamlin goes on, good, but I wanted to give you this, and hands her a stack of papers, which is like kind of rude. She's illiterate, if we recall. Tamlin is aware of this. Why is he handing her like things to read? He very quickly reads them to her. He wrote her some poems. Here's the first one. There once was a lady most beautiful, spirited if a little unusual. Her friends were few, but how the men did cue. To all she gave a refusal. And he goes on to explain that the second and fourth lines of each poem contain one of Feyre's words that she needed help with. Oh my gosh, he's like making her poems so she can learn. You're welcome. TBH, I don't know why this is supposed to make her feel better. I don't know why this is supposed to make her feel better. I don't know what Tamlin is thinking in this moment. And Tamlin is like, I actually really love writing poems. And this reminds me of that like internet quote that is like, if he writes you a few poems, he loves you. If he writes you 100 poems, he likes writing poems. Tamlin is just like self-admitting he's in the second category. He's just like, I actually love a poem. This is very little to do with, and more about just like having the excuse to write some poems. Anyway, they head back to the manor together, and then Feyre asks some questions. Feyre, we're in like the Q&A portion of the book. There was a lot of questions in this section. This one in particular, we're learning more about his parents, and she asked about the fact that he has always called their like union a mating rather than a wedding. And Tamlin explains that amongst the High Fae, there's this thing called the mating bond, which is like this magical perfect match between two High Fae. It's very, very rare. Sure. Mm-hmm. And it like magically bonds two souls together. And so that's what his parents had. It's like even more special and magical than husband and wife. Okay? So they wouldn't have a wedding. That would be silly if you were already mates. And Tamlin then goes on to say that his dad was like the literal worst, that he was just as bad, if not worse, than Lucian's father. And Tamlin also had two mean older brothers. Oh my gosh, twins. Him and Feyre are both babies of 3, same genders. But like I do think here we're seeing the difference between youngest sister of all girls and youngest brother of all boys. Different vibes. His mother was like a lot nicer. He like really did have a deep fondness for his mother, but she was like very attached to his father, obviously, because they were mated. And so like she never like strayed too far from his father's instructions for her. Tamlin said growing up, like fighting and killing were really the only things he was good at. Also, besides fiddling, he's a really good fiddle player. Okay. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. I would rather you play the fiddle than write poems. Unless you're really good at writing poems. Tamlin doesn't seem that good at writing poems. If you're like excellent at writing poems, obviously that's cool. But I feel like even like a mediocre to good fiddle player, that's pretty fun. Then we also find out Tamlin's whole family was killed by the High Lord of another court. And he was really only sad that his mom died. He was like cool about the rest because he didn't really like him. And then as they're almost back to the manor, Feyre sees all these like piles of wood, and Tamlin explains that there will be bonfires on all of these different stacks of wood for the spring festival of Calanmai that's happening in a couple days. And he's like, by the way, there might be a couple extra fairies around because the borders of all the courts are open on Calanmai and for the festival. But if you stay near the house, you should be totally fine. Like, we're not going to let those guys into like the house and the immediate gardens around there. And he also makes it very clear that Feyre is not invited to the ceremony because it is very Fae, is what he says. So she's not allowed to come, and she's a little annoyed at that because she wants to go. It seems kind of fun. But then as soon as they enter the garden, Tamlin goes rigid, and he tells Feyre to hide and not come out no matter what she hears. And so Feyre is like hidden behind a hedge. She was like hoping to make it back to the stables, but almost immediately it's like clear that whatever thing that Tamlin was scared about is here. She can spy Tamlin and Lucian through the leaves, and it looks like they're talking to empty air. There's like no one there. And Tamlin says, I know what day it is. But then a like spooky ooky mystery voice comes from out of the empty space. Scary. Your continued behavior is garnering a lot of interest at the court, the voice said, deep and sibilant, which means hissing. I Googled it because I said, I actually don't know what that word means. I learned a new word, sibilant. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Probably not. I shivered. Despite the warmth of the day, she's begun wondering why you haven't given up yet, and why four Naga wound up dead not too long ago. And Lucian says, Tamlin's not like the other fools. If she expected bowed heads, then she's more of an idiot than I thought. And the voice says, speak you so ill of she who holds your fate in her hands. With one word, she could destroy this pathetic estate. She wasn't pleased when she heard of you dispatching your warriors. The voice now seemed turned towards Tamlin, as nothing has come of it. She has chosen to ignore it. And Tamlin says, tell her I'm getting sick of cleaning up the trash she dumps on my borders. The voice continues, she sets them loose as gifts and reminders of what will happen if she catches you trying to break the terms of... He's not, Lucian snarled. Now get out. We have enough of your ilk swarming on the borders. We don't need you defiling our home, too. For that matter, stay the hell out of the cave. It's not some common road for filth like you to travel through as they please. The voice says, though you have a heart of stone, Tamlin, you certainly keep a host of fear inside of it. And then Lucian says, burn in hell. And Feyre hears the like flap of like leathery bat wings. And then Tamlin comes to retrieve Feyre from where she was hidden. And he's like, hey, what did you hear? Like, did you hear anything? And Feyre's like, I did hear, but like, I didn't understand a single thing you said. And who was that? And Tamlin says, the kind of fairy who inspires the legends that you humans are so afraid of. Myth given flesh. Feyre thinks to herself about the voice that she had heard. Inside that hissing voice, I'd heard the screaming of human victims, the pleading of young maidens whose chests had been split open on sacrificial altars. Okay, spooky, scary. And again, Feyre is trying to fathom who the heck the she is. Who is the she that they keep talking about? And then Tamlin says, if the adder saw her, and Lucien is like, it didn't. And then Feyre heads to her bedroom. The next day, dinner is very tense. The vibes still aren't good. She heads to paint, and she paints the creature she felt like she heard. She just like paints her impression of it, which is this like skeletal thing with these like gross giant wings. And then she goes to help Alice in the kitchen prepping food for Calanmai to like entertain herself. The next day, it's Calanmai. Tamlin and Lucien are gone all day, and all day there's kind of these like drum beats coming from the manor gardens. Even the house itself is like pretty empty. All the servants are gone, like out to like prep in the fields for the festivities and then like to go participate in them. And Feyre is like so bummed she's not invited. She's just like looking out into the garden as the sun sets, just kind of like, I wish I got to go to a party. And there's this like orchestra playing, and she's kind of like, what if I just like wandered out there just like a little bit? She almost feels like there's like a string pulling her towards the festivities. But then a shirtless Tamlin pops out from somewhere and is like, hello? And Feyre's like, where are you going? And Tamlin says, it's Calanmai. I have to go participate in the Great Rite. And Feyre says, what's the Great Rite? And Tamlin's like, just go to your room, lock your doors, and set your snares. Or whatever the heck it is that you do. And Feyre's like, why? Tamlin's like, just do it and do not come out until morning. And Feyre's like, okay, whatever. She listens. She goes and locks herself in her room immediately, but then she realizes she didn't even get herself dinner yet. Ugh, stupid. She's like so starving. And she's like, what am I supposed to do? And she's just like staring out her window, and she's like, can see the bonfires burning in the distance. She's just watching them. And she like spends the like entire evening just watching them. By 10 p.m., the drums like have convinced her that she needs to go out and just like doing a little investigation. She just wants to see what's happening out there. So she puts on a big cloak that covers her face, heads to the stables, and grabs like her white mare that she's been riding and a big cloak. Oh, she already has her cloak on. She puts her cloak on twice, according to my notes. I don't think she does in reality. Feyre's got like so many questions about where all these people came from. There are like hundreds of people out there, and she's really like at this point sees like 5 on a regular basis. And she's like, it's kind of weird. They were more solid when I viewed them from the side of my vision, but if I turned to face them, I was met with shadows and swirling colors. And she's like, clearly there's some sort of like magic over these people because she can't like truly see them when she looks at them directly. She starts out on foot following the beat of the drums. So she like gets close and she leaves her horse tied up somewhere and she heads out on foot following the beat of the drums. No one's really looking twice at her because she has this big cloak on. They're all kind of absorbed in their own little festivities. And she sees this like big cave that is decked out in like flowers and candles and clearly is like the center of everything that is supposed to be happening tonight. She like doesn't understand why she was banned. It seems like this is fun and she should have been invited. And then all of a sudden she feels a hand grab her. And these 3 strangers have approached her and they say to her, human woman, we have not seen one of you for a while. And Feyre's like, what do you want? And the man says, just some fire night fun. She's like trying to pull herself away from them, but she like can't wrench herself out of their grip. And none of the Fae around her are even looking up. She's like, what am I going to do to get out of this? She's definitely not stronger than them. They definitely have her like trapped. She's not sure what to do. Feyre's trying to fight them off, but they aren't budging. They're like pulling her towards the like tree line into like the forest where it is like completely dark. And she's like, this is going to be bad news. And she falls to the ground as she tries to pull away from them. But then strong, warm hands, a nice man catches her and he says to her, there you are, I've been looking for you. Said a deep, sensual male voice I'd never heard. But I kept my eyes on the 3 fairies, bracing myself for flight as the male behind me stepped to my side and slipped a casual arm around my shoulders. The 3 lesser fairies paled, their dark eyes wide. Thank you for finding her for me. My savior said to them, smooth and polished. Enjoy the rite. There was enough of a bite beneath his last words that the fairies stiffened. Without further comment, they scuttled back to the bonfires. I stepped out of the shelter of my savior's arm and turned to thank him. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I had ever seen. This gorge man is talking to her now. It's just the 2 of them. And he has black hair and violet eyes that twinkled with amusement as he beheld me, according to Feyre. Feyre immediately clocks that he must be from another court because he doesn't have like the mask on that marks everyone that was a member of Spring Court. And the man asks her, what is a mortal woman doing here on Fire Night? And Feyre's like, well, my friends brought me. And the man is like, well, where and who are your friends? And Feyre's like, 2 ladies. And the man asks, what are their names? And Feyre doesn't answer. And like pretty quickly this man realizes she's not gonna answer, and he continues, you're welcome for saving you. Strange for a mortal to be friends with 2 fairies. Aren't humans usually terrified of us? And aren't you, for that matter, supposed to be keeping to your side of the wall? And Feyre explains that she's like known them since they were young, and like they've never done anything to hurt her, so she's like not scared of them. She like weaves this whole story about her and her 2 fairy besties, and that they actually just went to go get snacks, and they'll be back in just a minute, and that's so you should probably leave before they get back. And the man is like, okay, for sure. Man starts smiling at Feyre, and Feyre's like warning bells are going off in her head. She's like, oh, this guy's dangerous. And the man's like, well, refreshments are like really far away, so they probably won't be back for like a while. Do you want me to escort you somewhere? And Feyre's like, no. And the man's like, okay, then enjoy the ride. Stay out of trouble. But then Feyre, instead of just letting this man leave, okay, this man who's giving her like some like warning bells, she's like, this man is dangerous, okay? Like, he's a dangerous man. He's clearly, like, powerful. The random men that, like, tried to kidnap her, we're scared of him. Like, he's given off, he's powerful, dangerous, might be trouble vibes. But Feyre's like, he's also gorgy, so I'm gonna need to ask him some more questions so he doesn't leave yet. So she starts asking him questions about, like, where he's from, and he reveals that, like, yes, he's not from the Spring Court, but he's, like, free to roam tonight, and, like, that's why he's here. And he does wind up leaving. She like is like, okay, bye, enjoy the ride. And almost immediately after this man leaves, Lucien comes up to her, and Lucien is like, what the heck are you doing out here? He's like yelling at her. He is mad. He's like, I told you to stay in the house in your room. He literally picks her up. She's trying to like explain that she has her horse here. He's like, doesn't want to hear it. He like picks her up and runs with her back to the manor. And she's like, he ran so fast, like faster than my horse could have gone. So I assume they're like twilight running back to the manor. He drops her in the hallway and is like, do not leave your room. And Feyre's like, why? And Lucian's like, did no one tell you what the great right was? She's like, Lucien is exasperated with Tamlin all the time. Like, he's like, why couldn't Tamlin just do the easy thing? Tamlin always like goes like this, when we could just go like that, you know? Like, we're going. And Lucien is like, why is he so bad at everything? Lucien says, did no one tell you what the great right is? All the High Lords of the 7 Courts need to refill the magic since it comes from the earth. Tamlin will allow magic to enter his body, which will turn him into the hunter, and then he will find his maiden. And then from their coupling, magic will be released and regenerated for the year to come. He picks a maiden from the crowd, and it is like this really big honor to be chosen. Like, all of those Fae women out there were like wanting to be the girly. And then everyone else gets to have a big orgy. So that's what's happening out there, and like, you do not want to participate. Okay? He would not be nice to you. And Feyre's like feeling very awkward now, obviously. She was like, really wish someone would have just like told me what was happening before I made myself into a situation. And Lucian's like, anyway, talk to you later. I gotta go try to control him once he smells you and can't find you. And then he reminds her again to stay in her room no matter who comes knocking. He's like, I'm not even joking. You have to stay in here. Feyre goes to her room. She falls asleep at her vanity. When the drums stop, the sudden like stop of the sound is enough to wake her up. She wakes up. It's just after 2 a.m. And Feyre finds herself feeling a little bit jealous of whoever Tamlin hooked up with. And she sneaks out of her room. She also, remember, never had dinner, and she did not go get snacks before she ran to the festivities. So she hasn't eaten yet. And so she's like, I'm really starving. It's late. Clearly the festivities are done. I probably should be fine to sneak downstairs and get myself a snack. And so she does, like, sneak downstairs. She like eats a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. She's about to head back upstairs and lock herself back in her room like she's supposed to when Tamlin appears. And he says to her, going somewhere? And Feyre's just like, midnight snack. But like, he is giving feral vibes. He's like still shirtless. He's got like stuff smidged on him. He's wearing like a crown. He's given feral vibes. And she tries to walk past him, but he grabs her and says, I smelled you. I searched for you, but you weren't there. And Feyre's like, let go, because at this point he's like pinned her to the wall. He has his claws out and he has like caged her in, claws into the wall on either side of her. Explains what his evening was like and explains how it would have been better if Feyre was there. But like, he goes into some details about like what he was up to and how things would have been different if Feyre would have been the one that he did the right with. Okay. Feyre then says to him, why should I want someone's leftovers? And then Tamlin leans down and bites her neck. He doesn't break skin, but he like bites her kind of hard. And then he lets go of her and he starts licking the spot where he bit her. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Nope. And then Tamlin says, don't ever disobey me again. And Feyre says, don't tell me what to do and don't bite me like some enraged beast. But like secretly she likes it. Okay, may this love never find me. You know, like, that's, and then he growls and leaves. I actually, ew, he like bites her. She said no. Then he bites her neck. Then he licks her. Okay. When she wakes up, it's late. She's taking a bath. The servants are still like sleeping. Everyone's kind of like resting after the festival. So she gets herself ready. She takes a bath and she realizes she has this huge bruise on her neck from where Tamlin bit her. And initially she's like looking for a scarf to try to cover it. And then she's like, no, you know what? I want him to look at what he did to me. I want him to think about it. Decides to wear her bruise proudly to make him think about what he did. She gets downstairs. Both Tamlin and Lucien are at the breakfast table. And Feyre's like, good afternoon. And Lucian's like, you look refreshed. Did you sleep well? And Feyre says, like a babe. And then Lucien is like, hey, what's with that on your neck? Why do you have a giant bruise there? And Feyre says, ask him. He did it. And Lucien turns to Tamlin. Hey, Tamlin, why does Feyre have a giant bruise on her neck? And Tamlin says, I bit her. We ran into each other in the hall after the rite. She seems to have a death wish. If Feyre can't be bothered to listen to orders, then I can't be held accountable for the consequences. Okay, ew, that's too gross. Feyre and him like fight back and forth, and Tamlin is like very insistent that she's the one in the wrong because she didn't listen to instructions. And like really, he can't be held accountable for his actions because he was like swept up in the rite. What was he supposed to do? Why can't she follow the rules? Feyre calls him a fairy pig and storms out, and she spends the afternoon painting him with pig features. He apologizes at dinner and brings her white roses, which she pretends to be like not into, but then she has Alice like set them up so nicely in her painting room because she does actually secretly love them. And then the next night at dinner, Feyre requests a dress for dinner, and Alice is like very suspicious because Feyre always wears like a tunic and leggings, and Feyre is like, well, I'm not gonna wear a dress all the time, I'm not gonna always wear gowns, but like I thought it would be nice to like dress up for dinner every now and again. She goes downstairs. She's feeling very nervous to be like in her fancy gown. You know, when you're like dressed up for something and you don't want to be like, you don't want to make a big deal of it. You like feel like you look weird. Like really, it's just like you're not used to yourself looking fancy. That's what's happening. She gets downstairs and Lucien sees her, clocks the fact she's in like a gown, which is like different. And he's immediately like, I actually am late for something very, very important. So I have to go. Feyre, like he like rushes out before Feyre can like stop him in any capacity. And then it's just her and Tamlin. She complains that the table is too big and that they're too far apart, and he magics away like a huge portion of the table, and now they're only like 2 feet away from each other. And Feyre's like, how did you do that? And Tamlin explains he magicked it to the between, which is this like broom closet tucked in the pocket between worlds. Okay. I assume it is like the void from The Good Place. From Janet. Janet's void. The Good Place. It used to be easier, but because of the blight, like magic is being affected, and this is becoming like significantly more difficult. Then Tamlin compliments her, says she's looking like really beautiful, and then Feyre says, "Come, I have something for you." And she leads him to her painting room, which she keeps locked all the time to prevent anyone from snooping around in there. And they like walk in, and she gifts him with one of her paintings. It's a painting of that glen with the pool of starlight. But then Tamlin is like in this painting room, and no one has been able to like look at her paintings. He's really taking the opportunity, and he carefully is like looking at the paintings that she has out, kind of like still propped up. And there's one of like the forest where she hunted, and there's another of Isaac Hale and her in the hay. It's just like their hands intertwined in the hay. And Tamlin comments that this is the only one with any brightness in it. And Feyre says like he was like really an escape for her, like one of the few like things that was like an escape and something that she just did for herself in her life. And then there's another painting of the night where the men came to beat her father, and she explains to Tamlin that she was there and had watched it because someone had to tell them to stop. Someone had to beg them to stop. And Tamlin requests the forest painting, the painting of the forest where she hunted, instead of the painting of the glen. And Feyre's like, well, that doesn't suit this place at all. Like I painted this for like the style of this place. And Tamlin says, I want it nonetheless. And Feyre says, tell me there's some way to help you. with the Maas, with whatever threat has taken so much of your power. Tell me what I can do to help you. And Tamlin says, there's nothing you can do. It is my burden to bear. And Feyre says, am I just supposed to live here in ignorance? Would you rather I find somewhere else to live, somewhere where I'm not going to be such a distraction? And Tamlin says, no. I want you here where I can look after you, where I can come home and know you are here, safe and painting. I used to think about sending you away, finding somewhere else for you in Prythian, but I couldn't bring myself to let you go. And Feyre says, why? And Tamlin says, I've had many lovers, he admitted. Females of noble birth, warriors, princesses. Rage hit me, low and deep at the thought of them. Rage at their titles, their undoubtedly good looks, at their closeness to him. But they never understood what it was like. What it is like for me to care for my people, my lands. What scars are still there. What the bad days feel like. He smiled at my painting. This reminds me of it. Of what? I breathed. He lowered the painting, looking right at me, right into me. That I am not alone. I didn't lock my bedroom door that night. The next day, Feyre is just chilling in the grass. She's out in a meadow somewhere, lying next to Tamlin. They're in a different glen. I don't think they're in the Starlight Glen. Maybe they are. And Tamlin explains that the willow in this glen sings to him, and it like puts him to sleep. But Feyre can't hear it because she only has her human senses. And he then goes on like, I could do something to make you be able to hear it too. And Feyre's like, how? Tamlin says, every gift comes with a price. The price for this one is a kiss. And Feyre's initially reluctant, but then agrees. I mean, he's like already bit her neck, so like, might as well. She didn't even get anything out of that one, so like, she might as well trade him a kiss for some fun stuff. And then he tells her to close her eyes, and he kisses both of her eyelids. And when she opens her eyes, the whole world has changed. It is like so overwhelmingly beautiful. There's like magic twisted around every aspect of it. It like smells like flowers, and there's like different songs in the air and different like creatures swirling around. Like it is just like so spectacularly beautiful. Like it's the same place, but like completely transformed. Feyre says, everything was magic and it broke my heart. And then she looks over at Tamlin, and he's also been transformed by this magic into this living embodiment of spring. He pretty quickly puts his glamour back on. But before he does, she's able to like see this man whose like eyes are like the different colors of the leaves, and like his skin is like glowing like sunlight, and he's like pretty spectacular. But then he puts his glamour back into place and transforms back into ordinary Tamlin. And Feyre again asks if there is any way that she can help fix the magical blight. And Tamlin is like, no. And then Tamlin is like, where's my kiss? My price? And she like grabs his hand and kisses the back of it real quick and says, there's your kiss. And then Tamlin's laughing. And then Feyre starts to hear the willow sing to her, and she starts to fall asleep in the glen. And Tamlin's like, I should take you home, because like clearly she's magically passing out in this meadow. But instead he lays down next to her and pets her hair. And Feyre is like, oh my gosh, this feels like an absolute dream. And then Tamlin says to her, you're exactly as I dreamed you'd be, too. When Feyre wakes up the next morning, there's an unfamiliar servant in her room with skin that looks like tree bark. And Feyre's like, hey, where the heck is Alice? And the woman is like, I'm Alice. You crazy? And Feyre realizes that her new Fey vision has stripped everything of its glamour. That, like, Tamlin had glamored, like, pretty much everything in the manor to like make sure that she didn't like freak out, because she was just like a cowering human, and he wanted her to be able to have like time to adjust to this place. She gets downstairs, and the hallways are full of fairies. Like there are like tens of people in the hallways, where like before it was like her, Alice, Lucien, and Tamlin. Like there were like 4, maybe 5. I think there were like a couple other servants, but like the house was like pretty empty. Suddenly it's like bustling in here. And she like had looked out her windows too, and the gardens are also like bustling and full of fairies, like ones that can fly and like all sorts of like different creatures and fairies. And she's like, whoa, this is crazy. Where did everyone come from? Lucien's down in the dining room, and he looks normal, and she's unclear if it's because like Lucien never had a glamour, or because Tamlin has already told him to like put his glamour on and like make sure he doesn't look crazy. And Feyre's like, hey, when did all these people get here? And Tamlin's like, they've been here all along. We just made sure you couldn't see or hear anyone, but those who were necessary. And Feyre says, so the night I went after the puka. And Tamlin's like, yeah, you had an audience. And at this moment, I would, if I was Feyre in this moment, I would need to leave immediately. I would be like, I actually have to flee the country. This is perhaps the most embarrassing thing that could have happened to me. She's been at this place for several months at this point now. And like every time she thought she was alone, and like outside of, I think probably her painting room and like her bedroom, like she was in the hallway, she was in the gardens, likely there were people around. Like, I talk to myself a lot, okay? Something I do. I'm chatting to myself all the time. I'm also singing along all the time, singing to myself, chatting to myself. What do you mean people were hearing me that whole time? Also, like, what if she was just like, I don't know, like existing in a way that you exist when you're not being observed? Like, she was like picking a wedgie, picking her nose, and all these people were watching her. Do you know that show that was on Amazon a few years ago called Jury Duty, where that guy was like, he didn't realize he was on a reality show. Like, he knew he was being filmed. They like filming a documentary, but like everyone else was in on it and like he didn't know. And then afterwards he had like some psychological damage from that, because turns out that's really bad for you to like be like Truman Showed like that. I feel like that might happen to like that in some way must be happening to Feyre right now. The fact that she did not know she was constantly being observed, but was traumatizing. She doesn't seem that traumatized, but I would be traumatized. I would actually need to flee the country. I would be so deeply embarrassed. I need to leave and be just like kind of like terrified. I'd be like, what? How many things did I do? Oh my, because we would have no way of knowing like what was watched and what wasn't and by who. I would need to flee the country. I would be like, bye, Tamlin. I'm actually going to go swim into the ocean right now. Anyway, she doesn't freak out like that. Feyre instead asked like why the glamour didn't apply to the Suriel or the Naga, and Tamlin explains it only worked on members of his court. And then her and Lucien are like chatting because she hasn't seen Lucien in a few days, and Lucien was like, well, it seems like you've been pretty busy too. And Feyre's like, what do you mean? And then Lucien says to her, if I offered you the moon on a string, would you give me a kiss too? Tamlin is like, stop, please stop it. Tamlin's just trying to flirt with Feyre, and Lucien is just not letting him live. Anyway, Lucien leaves, leaving Feyre alone with Tamlin. And Feyre asks Tamlin, if I saw the adder would he have a physical form? Why couldn't I see him last time if he didn't really seem like he was a member of your court? Tamlin explains, like, yes, you would see him if you saw him, like if you encountered him again, and he's really yucky. You should be glad I glamored him away from you because like he's gross. And he explains that no, the adder is not a member of the spring court, but Tamlin had thrown a glamour over Feyre to prevent her from being seen by the adder, and it like was a two-way one. So the adder couldn't see her, and she couldn't see the adder, but she could still hear the adder. Sometimes we don't need to ask questions about the details of the magic in this book, especially this book in particular. I feel like later in the series, we have like a much more cohesive sense of what's happening. Maybe we don't. Maybe we'll all get there along the way, and I'll be like, that doesn't make sense. But this is one of those times where I'm like, okay, I just have to trust you, Sarah. And then they like are talking more, and Tamlin warns that the blight is still spreading in other courts. It hasn't like really reached the spring court yet, but like it might pretty soon here. And he explains that like Tamlin has been like working really hard to keep her invisible to creatures like the adder, to like make sure a word of this like mortal girl that lives in the spring court has not gotten out to like the general populace, especially the spooky ookies. And then he says to her, if you spot one, Tamlin continued, even if it looks harmless but makes you feel uncomfortable, meaning a fairy. If you spot one, Tamlin continued, even if it looks harmless but makes you feel uncomfortable, pretend you don't see it. Don't talk to it. If it hurts you, the results won't be pleasant for it, or for me. Do you remember what happened with the Naga? Okay, I'm sorry, this doesn't make any sense to you. Like, what kind of plan is this? Tamlin's like, okay, so here's the plan. If you see something spooky and ooky, cover your eyes. Cover your eyes, because if I have to fight and kill it, it's going to be really hard on me. One, that wouldn't have worked with a Naga. Like, if she's really encountering a spooky and ooky, it seems like covering your eyes, not the great plan. Not the best plan. Okay, seems like you're going to get eaten that way. Two, why is her priority making sure you're not in a bad mood, sir? Like, in this situation, her priority should be not getting eaten. That is a higher precedent than, like, whether you're going to be bumped out. The next morning, after this conversation, Feyre is out in the garden. She's brought her little painting supplies. She's going to go paint outside. It's a nice day out because it's always a nice day in spring court. And she finds a head. She finds a head staked in the garden. It is, like, still very much bleeding. It is really gross. It doesn't have a mask on, so she doesn't think it's spring court. She obviously starts screaming. Tamlin and Lucien come running when they hear her screaming, and she is freaking out. We quickly learn that the head has been branded behind the ear with the symbol of the Night Court, which is this mountain with 3 stars above it. And we learn a little bit more about the Night Court, which is the furthest north court. So the furthest south court is spring court, for the furthest north court is Night Court, and they are evil. Okay? Sadistic killers, according to Lucien, who delight in torture. So we do not want to hang out with the Night Court besties. And Feyre says, is it a message? And Lucien says yes. to get in and out of our defenses, to possibly commit this crime nearby with the blood this fresh. It's exactly what the High Lord of the Night Court would find amusing. The bastard. And Tamlin is like, don't even freak out, because Feyre is actively freaking out, as you would if you found a head. Seems like a very normal reaction. And Tamlin's like, you're safe. This was just their idea of a prank. This is the Night Court pranking us. Okay? They have a YouTube channel. They're pranksters. I won't let it happen again. But it's like just court posturing. Like, they wouldn't dare to like come and attack someone of my court. That would like cause too much of an issue for them. They just did this to like be silly goofy. He doesn't say that, but it's kind of implied. And then they start talking about, then Feyre asks about like, what was the pranks? What were the pranks like back when like humans were enslaved to the Fae? Like, it must have been brutal for these humans. And Tamlin is like, well, I was just a child again when the war happened, so I like didn't see a ton of this, but I remember even as a child being kind of like having like a really bad time as I watched these humans endure this sort of cruelty. And he was like very glad when he saw them kind of released from slavery. And Tamlin talks about how even as a child the brutality had been like really hard for him to witness. And, like, how he kind of feels, like, really bad and terrible about it. And then Feyre says to him, you are not your father, Tamlin, or your brothers. You never made me feel like a prisoner. Never made me feel like little more than chattel. Okay. Actually, that's not true, Feyre. Actually, Ellen, that's not true. You definitely felt like a prisoner. Hey, bestie, you definitely felt like a prisoner, like, multiple times, on multiple occasions. Because, I hate to break it to you, you kind of are a prisoner. What do you mean you never felt like a prisoner? Like, yeah, he's giving you a craft table. I'm not saying it's a bad time. I'm not saying if I was also imprisoned in this situation that I wouldn't be having a great time. I love a craft. I have a craft room and no responsibilities. Someone cooks all my meals for me and does my hair. Oh my gosh, I'm having the best time ever. But you're still a prisoner. Like, you can't leave. Remember when you were like, I really would like to go see my family? And he was like, you literally can't leave? Yeah, you are a prison. You were imprisoned. You're a prisoner. Don't forget it, Feyre. Stockholm Syndrome. She's Stockholm Syndroming a little too close to the sun in this one. All right, we're back with me. I mean, you never left me. This is me on a different day in a different sweater. Anyway, when we pick up in the spring court, Tamlin is being called to another court overnight for the first time. This is the first time he has left Feyre overnight, and Feyre does not sleep well, which like I very much understand. I actually, in this current moment, not when this video comes out, so don't try to come murder me, but in this current moment, my roommate is not home. I'm home by myself, and in the nights I do get a little spooky ookied out. I mean, she's not home alone. Like, I think there are a lot of other people there, but like she's missing TimTam. But in the morning, she wakes up and everyone's partying. And she's like, what the heck is going on? There's like streamers and singing and dancing. And Alice is like, oh my gosh, it's the summer solstice. We better put you in a cutie patootie little dress. And so she gets put in this like cute little blue chiffon gown. She gets a little flower crown. They're getting her all ready for Coachella. And they're getting her ready for the party tonight. Tamlin returns. And she finds out that like she's going to get to go to the party tonight. It's not like the spring... Not the spring solstice, the spring, what is that? Like, Calanmai. It's not like Calanmai where there's, like, rites that she can't see because, like, Tamlin will bite her. This is an event she gets to go to. Great news. When she, like, arrives downstairs in her cute little outfit, Lucian is like, oh my gosh, cauldron, boil me. And she looks positively fey. She's looking gorgy. She's, like, really put on a little bit of weight since she's moved in to the spring court and, like, has had access to food and is just, like, looking healthy and good. First thing, she like almost immediately when they get to the party loses Tamlin and Lucian because she goes to the snack table because Girlie has her priorities in check. She says, I'm gonna need some snacks to get me through the evening. She goes and she's like looking at this like fizzy drink and Lucian comes over to her and he's like, Girlie, you can't have that, that's fairy wine. And she's like, I don't know, should I trust you, Lucian? Like, and he's like, remember those witch berries a few weeks back? And apparently Feyre got like essentially like very high, like she was hallucinating, like girl was tripping on these like witch berries. And so we just like, she like briefly recounts this, but like Girlie is just like painting, getting high with her friends, living her best life in the spring court. Anyway, Lucian is like, Tamlin would got me if he caught you drinking that. Feyre drinks him anyway. And she says it feels like starlight filtering through her veins. She's like, actually, this is so fun. Actually, I'm having the best time ever. Immediately she's giggling. Immediately she is feeling a little silly. She tells Lucian, I'm gonna pay you. And then she hears the music and she has to dance. It like is moving through her. She's like, I need to dance immediately. This is a quote. I skipped between the dancers, twirling my skirts. The seated, masked musicians didn't look up at me as I leapt before them, dancing in place. No chains, no boundaries, just me and the music. Dancing and dancing. I wasn't Feyre, but I was a part of this earth, and this earth was a part of me, and I would be content to dance upon it for the rest of my life. I love this for her. I love drunk Feyre. She's having the best time. So she's dancing to this music, and all of a sudden this fiddle player is like fiddling, and it's Tamlin. Tamlin is fiddling, and she's dancing to his fiddling. And unfortunately for me, this scene is like a little bit hot. I'm sorry, I do think the fiddling is hot. I think sometimes Tamlin gets a little bit like crapped on for his fiddling, but again, I will stand by, like, fiddling is kind of impressive. Like, it's an impressive instrument to play. Like, it's hard, and like he's pretty good at it. It's given like The Devil Went Down to Georgia. It's fun. It's fancy free. I love this for the blonde man. I think this is his most attractive feature. Lucian comes over to like babysit Feyre somewhere, and Tamlin is like, Lucian, go enjoy yourself. I've got my eye on Feyre. Don't even worry about it. And drunk Feyre, of course, is like, I don't even need someone to watch me. I'm so fine by myself. I don't need you. But Tamlin's gonna watch her anyway. And Feyre and TimTam are like dancing and fiddling, and they're just having like a gorgy little time. Like, Feyre is having the time of her life. Unfortunately for Feyre, the sun is like starting to set. Like, she's lost track of time. She's been having so much fun. And Rat Summer Solstice is almost over, which is just like devastating. And TimTam is like, hey, before the sun sets, let me take you somewhere super cute and fun, and let me show you a good time. I have something even better than this to show you. And she's like, okay, where are you going to show me? And they go to this like hill overlooking these like tall grasses, and all of a sudden, as the sun sets, the grasses themselves start to sing, and this like choir of voices rises up from the grasses, and it's the will-o'-the-wisps, which are these like spirits of light and air, and they come to like celebrate the solstice, and they're having a grand old time just singing, and it's beautiful. And Tamlin invites her to dance to the will-o'-the-wisps, and it's described as, I was unburdened as a piece of dandelion fluff, and he was the wind that stirred me about the world. And they like dance together for literal hours, because the next thing we hear, it's nearly dawn. Okay, that was like so quick, but all right. And Tamlin is gazing at her as like dawn breaks over the horizon. And Feyre's like, what are you even looking at? She's like still a little giggly drunk. I don't think she's quite as like wasted as she was before, but she's still a little like, she's feeling good. She's feeling nice. And Tamlin says, I'm thinking I might kiss you. And Feyre says, then do it. And then they kiss for a little bit. But then Tamlin has something else to show her. He says, wait, but before the sun comes totally up, there's something else to show you. And they like watch the sunrise together. I'm going to read you a big chunk now. The sky shifted into periwinkle, and the clouds filled with pink light. And then, like a shimmering disk, too rich and too clear to be described, the sun slipped over the horizon and lined everything with gold. It was like seeing the world being born, and we were the sole witnesses. Tamlin's arms tightened around me, and he kissed the top of my head. I pulled back, looking at him. The gold in his eyes, bright with the rising sun, flickered. What? My father once told me that I should let my sisters imagine a better life, a better world, and I told him that there was no such thing. I ran my thumb over his mouth, marveling, and shook my head. I never understood because I couldn't believe that was possible. I swallowed, lowering my hand, until now. His throat bobbed. His kiss that time was deep and thorough, unhurried and intent. I let the dawn creep inside me, let it grow with each movement of his lips, and brush his tongue against mine. Tears pricked beneath my closed eyes. It was the happiest moment of my life. This is like so cute and so fun, and like such an appropriate experience for like a 19-year-old college girly. The number of college freshmen I have had like recount this exact tale to me is staggering. Could not even count them. Where they're like, I met the most magical boy. I had the most magical night. We talked all night. We watched the sun rise together. I just feel like this is what 19-year-olds do. And I love that Feyre got to do this and live the happiest moment of her life just watching the sunrise with an average boy who plays a string instrument, you know? I think that's a beautiful life experience for her. The next day at lunch, which is like the first meal they're having together, because obviously they got back to like the house in the early morning. They went to bed, slept all the way through breakfast. It's like midday, maybe even mid-afternoon at this point where they're getting up. Lucian is teasing Feyre and Tamlin about not making it home before dawn. And the vibe between Feyre and Tamlin is too flirty to be appropriate with someone else in the room. Like, I was like, you know, Lucian is still here, guys. I know you're talking like he's not, but like he's right there. He can see you. Lucian unfortunately does have to break the mood because there's some bad news. His contact in the Winter Court has told him that the blight has gotten worse and has taken out 24 of their younglings in the Winter Court, and many of the other courts are also getting hit with some bad blight side effects. The only one that has seemingly been unscathed is the Night Court, of course. And Feyre's like, hold on a second. I didn't realize the blight could kill people. You didn't mention that. I just thought it was kind of a silly goofy thing that glued masks to your face. Having a mask glued to your face is a much different experience than being murdered. Also, I think she knows about the monsters running around. I don't know. She just didn't know that the blight directly could kill. And Tamlin is the blight is capable, but he gets cut off. He can't explain because all of a sudden the whole house goes silent because something is happening. Something is stirring. Something is afoot. And Tamlin says, go stand in front of the curtains. And Feyre is really? She's a little confused why Tamlin wouldn't want her to hide in the curtains. And it's because actually hiding in the curtains is a bad hiding spot, Feyre. Turns out, they would see you if you hid in the curtains. Tamlin is planning to use magic, but it's easier if she's, on the other side of the room. That's why he tells her to, go there, and she'll be between, the wall and Lucian. So it's, a safer locale. But, hiding in the curtains will do next to nothing. Feyre, babe, come on. Anyway, that makes me think that Feyre would be, actually truly terrible hide and seek. Anyway, she goes and stands right in front of the curtains, and Lucian stands in front of her, kind of blocking her off. Feyre's what could this even be? It seems they're really freaked out. The whole house has gone silent. Tamlin and Lucian seem really freaked out. It seems they're acting even more scared than when the Adder arrived. And so this must be someone even worse than the Adder. A man walks through the door, and she immediately is I know that guy. It's the handsome Fey man that she saw at Calanmai. She thinks to herself, I'd never dared to paint him, and now I knew I'd never have the nerve to. And Tamlin says, what do you want, Rhysand? That's the handsome Fey man's name. His name is Rhysand. Rhysand smiled, heartbreaking in its beauty. He put his hand on his chest. Rhysand, come now, Tamlin. I don't see you for 49 years, and you start calling me Rhysand? Only my prisoners and my enemies call me that. His grin widened as he finished, something in his countenance turning feral and deadly. More so than I'd ever seen Tamlin look. Rhysand turned, and I held my breath as he ran an eye over Lucian. A fox mask, appropriate for you, Lucian. Go to hell, Rhys, Lucian snapped. Always a pleasure dealing with the rabble, Rhysand said, his face Tamlin again. I still didn't breathe. I hope I wasn't interrupting. And then Tamlin says, we were actually having lunch. We were having a lovely meal until you showed up, so you are interrupting. You're being kind of rude. So could you leave? Why are you even here? And Rhys is I wanted to check to make sure you got my little present. And apparently that head that Feyre found in the garden was from Rhys. Okay. Not maybe what I would have picked as a present, but it's what a cat would bring. Maybe not a whole human head. I don't think cats normally bring whole human heads, but they do bring dead things. Same vibe. I don't think that's the vibe Rhys is going for. And then he starts talking about how Tamlin's been here for 49 years, but he hasn't really tried to save himself or his core. And then he just honestly they just go back and forth. They go back and forth. They have bullying villain banter. You know what I mean? The villain banter. They're villain bantering. And then Lucian is what do you even know? You're just Amarantha's whore. And truly we are just having villain banter, mortal enemy banter, and it really does give me the vibe of a Disney Channel show. Honestly, this banter, probably not the use of the word horror or the decapitated head, but this could be a scene from Kim Possible in which Lucian, I do believe, is Shigo. Even though Shigo obviously was on the villain side, he just gives Shigo energy. He gives Shigo energy that would make Rhysand Dr. Draken, which does make sense to me. Tamlin would be Kim Possible. And I do think that would make Feyre Ron stoppable. But I do think that's the energy we're bringing to the party. It's kind of a Kim Possible villain monologue moment. He's just talking, and Rhys is Amarantha is looking forward to seeing you so soon, since you didn't do what you were supposed to do to save your court. So we'll see you so soon when our evil plot has finally come to fruition. You know the vibes. That's what he's doing. And he's about to leave. He's about to be done with his little evil villain monologue when he spots the third place setting. When he's 1, 2, 3, there's 3 place settings and 2 young men in front of me. So what's the deal with that? Why is there a third place setting? And they try to cover it up for a little second. Lucian's Tamlin actually just likes to use 2 plates, one for his left hand and one for his right hand. Rhys is not buying it. He very quickly realizes that Feyre is glamoured in the corner, and he gets annoyed. How dare they use a glamour on him? And then Feyre is unglamoured. Rhys says to her, I remember you. It seems like you ignored my warning to stay out of trouble. Who, pray tell, is your guest? And Lucien is like, that girl? Oh, that's my betrothed. And Rhysand is like, aw. And he, like, walks over. He's starting to walk towards Feyre. Lucien, draws his sword to, like, defend Feyre against Rhysand. And Rhys says, you draw blood from me, Lucien, and you'll learn how quickly Amarantha's whore can make the entire Autumn Court bleed, especially its darling lady. So, essentially, he's threatening Lucien's mom, which is kind of rude. And Tamlin says, put your sword down, Lucien! Which, this is embarrassing for him. He's making Kim Possible, like, disappointed. Remember how I called him Kim Possible a second ago? Kim Possible would never. He would never let Dr. Draken just approach Ron willy-nilly. Anyway, Tamlin's like, whatever. Tamlin's like, put your sword down. Don't upset Rhys. And then Rhysand says to Lucien, I knew you liked to stoop low with lovers, Lucien, but I never thought you'd actually dabble with mortal trash. Okay. Feyre is catching strays in this conversation. She's just standing here minding her own business. She was just trying to have lunch. She's probably a little hungover, to be honest. She was out partying last night. Now she's catching strays at the lunch table. And Tamlin's like, could you leave? You're being kind of mean. For, like, why? And then Rhys, like, approaches. So now there's no one standing between Feyre and Rhysand. So Rhysand approaches Feyre. He takes away her knife because she obviously pulled her knife from the table. And he takes it away with what is described as horrific gentleness. Okay. Love that for him. That won't do you any good anyway, Rhysand said to me. If you were wise, you would be screaming and running away from this place, from these people. It's a wonder that you're still here, actually. My confusion must be written across my face, for Rhysand laughed loudly. Oh, she doesn't know, does she? And then Tamlin's like, you have seconds to get out. Or what, Tamlin? Or what? You wouldn't even let Lucien, like, threaten him with a sword. What are you going to do to him? Nothing. No one's scared of you, Blondie. And Rhysand says, if I were you, I would speak to me like that. Feyre goes rigid, and then Rhys is inside her mind. She can feel him, like, scraping around in there with, like, his little claws. Ooh, she, like, doesn't like it. And Tamlin's like, oh, let go, that's enough, leave her alone. She's just a girl. And Rhysand says, I'd forgotten how fragile human minds are. Easy to shatter as eggshells. Look at how delightful she is, how she's trying not to cry out in terror. I would be quick. I promise. She has the most delicious thoughts about you, Tamlin. And then he does go into detail telling Tamlin about Feyre's thoughts about Tamlin. And unfortunately, again, I will not be able to repeat them, but they are PG-13 to R-rated thoughts. And that would be embarrassing. Poor Feyre is just being dragged through the embarrassment ringer. First, everyone was watching. Like, the whole palace was full of invisible people. When she thought she was by herself, people were watching her. Horrifying. Now, this man is going through her thoughts and reading the, like, dirty ones aloud about her crush. Devastating. And Tamlin's like, please, let her go. He's such a whiny baby. And Rhysand is like, if it's any consolation, she would have been the one. A little late, though. She's more stubborn than you are. Amarantha will enjoy breaking her. Almost as much as she'll enjoy watching you as she shatters her bit by bit. And Tamlin's like, please don't tell Amarantha about her. What if you didn't tell Amarantha about her? And Rhys is like, why not? As her whore, shouldn't I tell her? And Tamlin's like, please. And Rhys is like, beg. And Tamlin gets on his knees. And Rhys says, lower, actually. And he makes Tamlin put his forehead on the ground and beg for Feyre's life. And then Tamlin does, embarrassingly. But, like, okay, we'll take it. It was better than you just being like, get out, or I'm gonna tell my mom. Like, what? So we'll take this. Tamlin is like, okay, did I beg enough? Are you not going to tell her? And Rhys is like, maybe. And then Tamlin jumps at Rhys, but Rhys just, like, shoves him away. And then Rhys turns to Feyre and says, what's your name, love? Feyre knows she can't give her real name because that would immediately, like, point this guy, like, at her family. And she knows, like, she needs to keep her family safe from the Fae. And so she gives the name Claire Better, which was, like, a random girl who was, like, name dropped in the first couple chapters. Like, truly, like, a rando. I think, like, vaguely someone they were friends with back in the days when her family was wealthy. And then Rhys says, well, this was entertaining. The most fun I've had in ages. TTYL. See you guys under the mountain. And then he poofs and vanishes. After Rhys leaves, Feyre is kind of, like, sent out to bed. Tamlin, like, kicks her and Lucien out of the dining room and then closes the door because he, like, needs to think. Whatever. Alice is obviously waiting with, like, a cup of hot chocolate. She, like, comes upstairs, gets Feyre ready for bed, and now she's just laying there, like, staring at the ceiling. And Feyre also didn't go to dinner. She, like, stayed up in her room for the rest of the day. She's pretty freaked out about what she heard, but at least now she kind of has, like, a better sense of what's been happening. She knows, like, this vague she that Lucien and Tamlin have been, like, mentioning is Amarantha. She has a name behind it, but she, like, still doesn't totally understand, like, what is happening in terms of, like, this woman. Is she connected to the Blight? Like, what is going on? Who is this Rhysand fellow? all that. Tamlin does come to check on her, and he apologizes, and then he tells her that he's sending her home. He says it's just like not safe for you here. And Feyre's like really confused because the reason she's here is because of this treaty thing. She didn't think there was a loophole. Remember how she was like really trying to get out of it, and everyone was like, you can't get out of it. There's no way out of it. And now they're just like, actually, you could leave. And she's like, that doesn't really seem like it would work that way. And Tamlin's like, you know what? If they have a problem with it, they can tell me. Who is they? I don't know. The mortal queens that wrote the treaty? I don't know. But Feyre is like pretty upset by this, honestly. She's like, did I do something wrong? And Tamlin says, you did nothing wrong. You were perfect. And he explains he's sending her away because he like can't keep her safe. Like he can't keep, like his job as High Lord of the Spring Court is to like keep his court safe, and he hasn't been able to effectively do that. Like seeing Rhysand in their house today made him realize that like he can't even like keep his own home safe. That like there's no way for her to be safe here. It is like becoming far too dangerous for her to remain here. And he is like, okay, when you return, like don't tell your family where you've been. It's like very important that you keep this on the DL. Like again, they will have been glamored to believe that you were with your aunt. Just like go with it. Okay, it's too dangerous if people know that you have been here. Spies will be looking for you. And Feyre is like, wait, like I want to stay here. Like treaty or no treaty, blight or no blight. Like I want to stay here. Like this place, I like it here. And Tamlin is like, no, Rhys was just the start. Worse creatures are coming. And Feyre says, so you're sending me away because I'm useless in a fight? And Tamlin says, I'm sending you away because it makes me sick to think about you in their hands. And Feyre says, how long do I have to go away for? A week? A month? A year? And Tamlin is like, I don't know. And she can tell that he doesn't think that she'll ever be able to come back. That like this is like a really desperate situation, and he really doesn't see a way out. Feyre says, but not forever, right? Even if the blight spread to the spring court again, even if it could shred me apart, I would come back. He brushed the hair from my face. I shook him off. I suppose it'll be easier if I'm gone, I said, looking away from him. Who wants someone around who is so covered in thorns? Thorns? Thorny, prickly, sour, contrary. He leaned forward and kissed me lightly. And Feyre knows that he's lying, but they like make out and they sleep together. I really feel like this is a moment in which we get to see the way in which Feyre sees herself is so similar to Nesta. I think when you objectively look at the girls from the outside, like you might not necessarily like put Nesta and Feyre together in this way, but Feyre also sees herself as someone like innately unlikable and like difficult in not as strong of a way as Nesta. Nesta is definitely like meaner than Feyre, but both of them have this like stubbornness and this fierceness and this like toughness that makes it very difficult for them to like be loved. And I think Feyre sees herself in these situations where like she doesn't really feel like her family loves her and wants her, and she's kind of feeling finally at home in this place, and she was hoping and believing to some extent that like Tamlin was starting to like appreciate the like pricklier aspects of her and like accepting her despite those aspects, and but she's being sent away. The other Tamlin explains that like she's leaving tomorrow, like the carriage to take her back to her home will be here tomorrow, but he spends the night with her. And Feyre again is just like so sad because this place really has become a home for her in a way that her family home never was. Like she feels like she belongs here. She feels like she can like be herself here. She's not forced into this constant loop of like trying to survive, which like just limits the ability to like be fully herself. And as she's falling asleep, he whispers in her ear, I love you, thorns and all. The next day she wakes up and Alice is like getting her ready. She's dressed in like mortal fashions of the like wealthy to leave. And Alice says to her, no weepy farewells. And Feyre says, I don't like goodbyes. And Alice says, me either. And then Lucien kind of like teases her about her outfit as she gets downstairs, but like she's really not in the mood. And Tamlin is waiting for her by her carriage. And Lucien says to Feyre as she's about to like climb into this carriage, I thought you were smarter than this. And Feyre's like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, goodbye to you too. Like, what are you saying? Like, this was not my choice. This is not what I wanted. But like, here we are. And then Lucien says to Tamlin, you aren't going to give her even a few more days before you send her back to that human cesspit. And Tamlin says, this isn't up for debate. Like, I'll see you at lunch, essentially like dismissing Lucien. But he's like not willing to debate the fact that Feyre's leaving. Like, that's something that he's decided, and that's what will be happening. And so Lucien leaving only Tamlin and Feyre like out, standing in front of this carriage. And Tamlin says to her, remember what I told you? And Feyre's not entirely sure what he means here, but she's hoping that he means like his confession of love that he whispered to her the night before. Tamlin tells her the mortal realm remains safe for you and your family. And then Feyre says to him, my paintings, they're yours. Which like, okay. Like, she can't really bring them back with her because they're, like, paintings of largely the fairy world, so it would be, like, a little bit, like, like, not a great sign to bring them back. She's supposed to be on the, keeping a low profile. It kind of feels like if you work with children a lot, something will happen in which sometimes when a kid is, like, coloring or doing an art project, they will give it to you not because they want to give it to you. Sometimes they give you it, like, because they worked hard on it, they want to give it to you. Sometimes they give you a coloring sheet that, like, they're just done with and they don't want to bother, like, throwing it in the trash can, so now you own it. And that's kind of what it feels like here. Feyre's like, all my crap that I left back at the house, I guess you can keep it. I think she means it sweeter than that, but that's kind of the vibe she's giving. And then Tamlin says to her, I will see you again. And then they kiss, and he loads her into the carriage as he says, I love you. And Feyre thinks about saying it back. She's like, I should say it back. But then she's like, better not. Actually starts to think about her own mortality. She's like, I don't want to burden him with my love. My love would be a burden he would have to carry because I'm going to die and he shan't die. So I shan't tell him I love him. Even though I do. And then the carriage rides off. It takes many days, but she arrives at her family house, and it is this huge manor. It is nearly the size of Tamlin's manor, which, like, was massive. Like, they're wealthy. And it's so strange to be back in the human world with, like, humans all around instead of fae, and, like, without the presence of magic. She can, like, feel it in the air, the difference. Her sisters come out to the carriage, and they don't even immediately recognize her. It, like, takes her being like, hey, guys, it's me. Hey guys, it's me, for them to, like, be like, oh my gosh, hey girly, oh my gosh, hey. One, she's, like, physically changed. She's, like, put on weight and, like, is looking healthier and better. She's been gone for, like, 6 months. But also, they, like, the situationally, they weren't expecting her. So, like, the story that her sisters and family have been glamored to believe is that Feyre went to go live with her wealthy aunt, and now the aunt has died and left Feyre with her fortunes. And so Feyre has, like, trunks and trunks of stuff with her because she's, like, brought all the aunt's fortunes back. And Elena's like, oh my gosh, Dad's gonna be so sad that he never got to say goodbye to the aunt. I don't know if this aunt is supposed to be his sister or their mom's sister. I can't remember if we know. But, like, Elena's like, oh, that's such a bummer. But welcome back. Nesta says to her, why are you being so quiet? And Feyre thinks, I'd forgotten how cunning her eyes were, how cold. She'd been made differently, from something harder and stronger than bone and blood. She was as different from the humans around us as I had become. I love Nesta. And then Elaine says to Feyre, you never got our letters? And Feyre is surprised that Elaine didn't realize that Feyre can't read. The reading thing does, like, grind my gears because it becomes, like, a real mark against Nesta in some of the online discourse. And I just truly don't believe this one should be a mark against Nesta because, one, their mom died when Feyre was 8, and they didn't become poor until she was 11. By 11, you can read, like, you can read well. You can read, like, fully read. And I also feel like it was 100% her dad's responsibility to get her reading. And Feyre obviously didn't make a big deal of it because Elaine didn't even know she couldn't read. At no point in these years and years and years did Feyre go, hey guys, I can't read. Can somebody help me? And sometimes you do have to be like, hey guys, I can't read, please. Somebody teach me how to read. Feyre did need to self-advocate in this situation because clearly her sister, and the nice sister, like Elaine, is maybe not paying a lot of attention. But, like, she's a nice girl. If you had asked Elaine how to teach you how to read, I bet Elaine would have taught you how to read, Feyre. And don't be like, Feyre was busy hunting in the forest. Feyre didn't start hunting in the forest till she was 14. We had 6 years from the time Mom died to the time Feyre started hunting that Elaine could have taught her how to read. We had ample opportunity. And then Elaine explains that, like, kind of what happened, and that, like, right after Feyre left to go stay with this wealthy aunt, that a man came and was like, hey, Papa Archeron, I heard that you used to be good at investing things. Will you invest my money? And Papa Archeron is like, what? And he says, if you do it, here's some money right away. And Papa Archeron is like, okay. And he invests the money, and immediately, like money starts rolling in. Like, the investments are very, very successful. He starts making a ton of money. And also, they find the ships that were lost 8 years ago. They were like, oh my gosh, those ships you thought were actually, yeah, they're actually right over here. It's been 8 years. They found them. It was like an Odysseus situation. My note here says, if I were Tamlin, I would have made it so his wood carving business really took off. Because obviously, like, we needed to have some, like, pretense, some reason that they suddenly became super wealthy. And I just think it would be more fun for everyone if suddenly his wood cutting business was just like, really popping off. Like, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we cannot get enough of these wood cuttings. They're so great. Like, he gets, like, a patron. Like, he becomes, like, an artiste, a woodcutting artiste. Like, they pick him up. They pick up his wood cuttings and they start, like, mass marketing them. He becomes the, like, wood carver of Prythian. I guess not Prythian. Again, Prythian is just the Feylands. There's the Mortal Lands, the continent. I don't know. He becomes, like, a famous wood carver. I think that would have been more fun. A more fun tale for Papa Archeron. Elaine's, like, ready to take her on a house tour, but Nesta is just watching her. Feyre is, like, weirded out by Nesta's behavior because Nesta is acting like a weirdo. She's just, like, quietly, like, staring. And, like, Nesta was never, like, nice. She didn't, like, expect, like, a warm welcome from Nesta. But, like, Nesta would have had some commentary on her outfit. Nesta would have, like, had some thoughts, some thinks. Like, Nesta was always a little mean. Feyre, meanwhile, is, like, busy spiraling because she, like, really misses Tamlin. And she thinks she was, like, in love with him. And, like, it was probably a mistake to leave him. And she, like, can't believe she's here now. And, like, what is she supposed to do without him? And, like, blah, 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 blah. You know, mentally spiraling. And Papa Archeron is like, oh my gosh, so good to see you. So glad you're home. We need to have a ball to celebrate your return, obviously, to our home. And then they, like, are excited to have her. They, like, have some meals with her. Feyre's making up stories about her time with her aunt. It's, like, not hard to do because, like, I don't know. You could make up stories about staying with a wealthy aunt, too. There's, like, no one to corroborate them, so, like, you could say whatever the heck you wanted. Tamlin sent her back with, like, trunks and trunks of stuff to act as her aunt fortune, and her dad is, like, currently doing inventory over it, and he's just, like, in general doing well. He's, like, laughing and smiling, and him and Elaine are just, like, besties having the best time. Like, they're just being best friends together. And Elaine just has the most beautiful garden, and she has these, like, really luxurious seeds that she's gotten, and, like, tulip bulbs, and just, like, the fanciest garden. She's having, like, the fanciest time, and she's like, I actually next spring want to take a trip to the continent to go look for even more cool stuff for my garden. I invited Nesta. She says she doesn't want to go because that seems too risky, which, like, yeah, it does seem a little risky, but okay. But you should come with me, Feyre. And Feyre's like, I thought, like, that's going to be during, like, the season, like, you know, time for you to go out and, like, find your husband. You've seen Bridgerton. The spring is the season time when you go to the balls. And Elaine's like, yeah, things were kind of weird this season, so I don't know about next season. I'll be okay with missing some. Meanwhile, Nesta's still just being a weird, quiet weirdo, standing in the corner staring, giving, like, minimal answers when asked direct questions. And Feyre is like, what the heck is going on? Meanwhile, Elaine is just, like, truly giving her the updates, and Elaine explains that, like, the vibe with all the other socialites have been really weird, and she doesn't, like, the socialites have all just kind of, like, pretended that their last 6 years, or their last 8 years of poverty just, like, didn't happen, that they were, like, out with the flu for, you know, a couple weeks, but, like, everyone's back, and, like, pretending like those 6 years didn't, or those 8 years didn't elapse, and that, like, they didn't, like, look down on them when they were impoverished. And, like, Nesta has, like, had a really particularly difficult time with that, and Elaine a little bit as well, but, like, just haven't been able to, like, reintegrate themselves into the wealthy society as easily as they would have thought. And Elaine also explains that, like, sometimes it makes her wish for those years again, even with the hunger and the cold, because Nesta is a weirdo and Papa Archeron is always busy. And Elaine, beloved, sweet girl, hey girly, I love that you really prioritize your family. I do. Unfortunately, you were starving to death, and you were doing nothing, and also catching no strays for it. Like, no one was mad at you for the fact that you were doing nothing, but you were indeed doing nothing and almost starving to death. Like, I don't think we should go back. Remember how Feyre was in the forest every day hunting for your dinner? Elaine explains that Nesta didn't even finish the season. Like, Nesta went to a couple balls but didn't even finish the season. And we'll learn in Silver Flames, maybe even before that. But, like, for sure in Silver Flames, this is not a spoiler. Pinky promise. This is just, like, a little tidbit. That, like, Nesta loved a ball back when they were, like, wealthy girls, like, in the olden days. Like, loved a ball, is good at a ball. Like, that's what she was kind of, like, bred to do, is be a Bridgerton girly. She would have been the diamond of the season. So it was, like, weird that she had such a rough time after the first few balls and was like, no, I'm not into this. Elaine's like, I hate when I have friends over because she makes everyone so uncomfortable. She's, like, such a weirdo these days. And then Elaine says, she went to see you, Nesta. Nesta went to see you, you know. You might not know because you never got her letters, but she like left to go visit you. She was gone for a week, but her carriage broke down before she got there, and she wound up just coming back to the house rather than trying to make it to our aunt's house. And Feyre's like, that's so weird. I, like, wonder what happened because, like, obviously with the glamour, like, there was no aunt to go to. So put that in your pocket for later. And then Elaine comments on the fact that Feyre looks, like, so different than she did when she left, and she asks if Feyre met someone. In general, like, Elaine is thriving, and Feyre spends, like, the next few days with Elaine in the garden. She's painting, Feyre's gardening. or other way around. Feyre is painting, Elaine is gardening. They're just having like fun sister time. And meanwhile, Papa Archeron is counting Feyre's money. She's like quite wealthy. She's a wealthy woman. After she kind of gets all of her money counted and she has like a number to put with like how much money she has, she decides to make a trip to the cottage. They don't live far from the cottage they used to live in. It's about 3 miles, we're told. And she makes the trip there. And she thinks as she like gets back to the cottage, I gazed at that sad, dark house. The place had been a prison. Elaine had said she missed it, and I wondered what she saw when she looked at the cottage. If she beheld not a prison, but a shelter from a world that had possessed so little good. But she had tried to find it anyway, even if it had seemed foolish and useless to me. She had looked at that cottage with hope. I had looked at it with nothing but hatred, and I knew which one of us had been stronger. I think the implication here is that Elaine was stronger. We haven't gotten... Okay, I'm not an Elaine hater. I'm just, like, so deeply neutral about Elaine. So deeply neutral about Elaine. I'm, like, very curious. Supposedly, if we ever get another ACOTAR book, I do believe it is supposed to be an Elaine book. We're supposed to get an Elaine book in a similar way that Nesta got a book. And I am deeply curious to see what Sarah J. Maas does with Elaine. Because to me, Elaine is just, like, truly the most boring thing on the planet. And her, like, choosing hope in the face of like darkness is like really lovely, like a really lovely thought. And I do think that's a character that can be done well. I just like truly don't know if Elaine like portrays that, because to me it's not like hope as a way of like trying to survive in darkness, but instead like just like total naivete, ignorance. And that's not the same thing as hope. When I think about like hope, I think about like Throne of Glass. I think about Miss Aleed, hopeful girly, hopeful and stubborn. Where I think Elaine here is like hopeful in this just like vague sense of like everything will work out. Blink, 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 blink. Let me go plant some flowers while my family starves to death. Feyre, after she finishes at the cottage, she heads to the village. She walks right past all the rich people that spent the last few years ignoring them, and she walks to the poor part of town, and she starts passing out bags of gold and silver. Like, what she really would have wished for when she was living in poverty. To like really make, I mean, it's like obviously like a small impact on like the larger, she's not like fixing poverty in her village, but like she's doing what she can now that she has the means, because she knows what it is to go hungry and she wants to make a difference to those people. And I think she really does. And as she's doing that, she hears Tomas Mondre, who was the boy that Nesta was like, I'm going to get engaged to him. And Feyre was like, I don't trust him. Talking with his cronies, it says. Obviously not a nice guy. If you have cronies and not friends, you're obviously the villain in this situation. And they're talking about how the Better family house burnt to the ground, and that they went and like looted it essentially, but that it's like completely burnt to the ground. And then on her way out, she bumps into Isaac Hale, and he is with his new wife. And Feyre describes how she's just like pretty, and they look quite happy, and she doesn't feel like any resentment. She like kind of expected to feel some jealousy over Isaac, but she feels nothing for Isaac anymore. She like really has fallen for Tamlin in this way that has really erased any feelings that she had lingering for Isaac, and she just like wishes them well with her entire heart, which is so sweet. The whole house is thrown into this like flurry of activity, and Feyre still doesn't like totally know what's going on. She spends like all of her spare time thinking about like the Tamlin and Amarantha situation and what might be going on the other side of the wall. And she's out in the garden and with Elaine again, and she is wearing this big floppy hat that the gardener's brought over, and she's looking at her hands that are just like freckled and tanned from all the time she spent in the sun in the spring court, and how like evident that it is that she still doesn't belong in this place. Like she had really found belonging in the spring court, where she was allowed to be like messy. She like didn't have to be like a proper lady like the expectations are here. She was allowed to like be messy and paint splattered and freckled, and it didn't matter. And Nesta says, as she's like looking down at her hands, even if you washed them, there'd be no hiding it. To fit in, you'd have to wear gloves and never take them off. And Feyre's like, maybe I don't want to fit in with your social circles. And Nesta says, then why are you even bothering to stay here? And Feyre says, it's my home, isn't it? And Nesta says, no, it's not. I think your home is somewhere very far away. And Feyre says, Aunt Ripley's house? And Nesta cuts her off. There is no Aunt Ripley. Nesta reached into her pocket and tossed something onto the churned up earth. It is a chunk of the table, the part where Feyre had painted those foxglove flowers. Your beast's little trick didn't work on me. Apparently an iron will is all it takes to keep a Glamour from digging in. So I had to watch as Father and Elaine went from sobbing hysterics to nothing. I had to listen to them talk about how lucky it was for you to be taken up by some made-up aunt's house, how some winter wind had shattered our door. And I thought I'd gone mad, but every time I did, I would look at that painted part of the table, then at the claw marks farther down, and I knew it wasn't in my head. Feyre thinks to herself, I'd never heard of a Glamour not working, but Nesta's mind was so entirely her own. She had put up such strong walls of steel and iron and ash wood that even a High Lord's magic could not pierce them. And then Feyre realizes that means that when Elaine told the story of Nesta coming to try to visit Feyre at their aunt's house, that Nesta had known the whole time that there was no aunt and that Nesta had tried to come for her. She realizes that, like, that vision of her father might not have been true, but, like, that out there somewhere Nesta was trying to get to her. Nesta goes on to say, he stole you away in the night claiming some nonsense about the treaty, and then everything went on as if it had never happened. It wasn't right. None of it was right. And Feyre says, you went after me. You went after me to Prithian. And Nesta says, I got to the wall, but I couldn't find a way through. I raised a shaking hand to my throat. You trekked 2 days there and 2 days back through the winter woods. She shrugged, looking at the sliver of wood she'd pried from the table. I hired that mercenary from town to bring me a week after you were taken, with the money from your pelt. She was the only one who seemed like she would believe me. You did that for me? Nesta's eyes, my eyes, our mother's eyes, met mine. It wasn't right, she said again. Tamlin had been wrong when we discussed whether my father would have ever come after me. He didn't possess the courage, the anger. And then Feyre asks, what happened to Thomas Mandray? And Nesta says, I realized he wouldn't have gone with me to save you from Prithian. And that, for her, with that raging, unrelenting heart, it would have been a line in the sand. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. At this woman who couldn't stomach the sycophants who now surrounded her, who had never spent a day in the forest, but had gone into wolf's territory, who had shrouded the loss of our mother and then our downfall in an icy rage and bitterness, because the anger had been a lifeline, the cruelty a release, but she had cared, and perhaps loved more fiercely than I could comprehend, more deeply and loyally. Maas never deserved you anyway, I said softly. My sister didn't smile, but a light shone in her blue-gray eyes. Tell me everything that happened, she said, an order, not a request, so I did. And when I finished my story, Nesta merely stared at me for a long while before asking me to teach her how to paint. And that's my girl. In that moment, I became a Nesta girl, and I never stopped being a Nesta girl. I understand Nesta was not perfect, but, like, this girl went into the forest, went to the wall to look for her sister. When she's not an outdoorsy girl, she's not going camping. Their father did not go into the forest for Feyre, but Nesta did. Later, like a couple chapters, Feyre will go to the wall and she'll talk about how, like, frightening the wall is, just like as a place, and how, as someone who's even, like, comfortable in the forest, how, like, terrifying that journey is. And for Nesta to make that journey, and to make that journey with a mercenary who is already, we're told, a figure that, like, Nesta does not trust. Nesta, like, recently was robbed by someone like this, and she willingly goes into the forest with them alone because she has to go get her sister. That her sister is, like, on this other side of the wall and she hasn't been able to help her. There's this, like, helplessness that Nesta, like, doesn't even know how to face. This, like, rage that has nowhere to go. Nesta and Feyre paint together, and Feyre just says, it goes how you think it would go with Nesta, which means, like, Feyre's not having the best time because Nesta's still Nesta, and Nesta is still going to be mean. That's just, like, kind of her disposition. Also, again, I think she's probably funny. Lucian is like, you've never laughed. Again, I think Nesta's probably making you giggle. Elaine and Papa Archeron are just, like, bestie friends. They're, like, really thriving in this false reality. And Nesta hates it. Nesta says to Feyre one day when they're, like, painting together, there are days when I went to ask him if he remembers the years he almost let us starve to death. And Feyre's like, I mean, you spent, like, every copper you could find, too. Like, what do you mean he let us almost starve to death? And Nesta says, no, I knew you could get us more. And if you couldn't, then I wanted to see if he would ever try to do it himself. Instead of carving those bits of wood, if he would actually go out and fight for us. I couldn't take care of us, not the way you did. I hated you for that. I hated him more, though. I still do. And Feyre says, does he know? And Nesta says, he's always known. Yeah, obviously, Feyre. You would have to literally be so dense. Nesta has made it no secret that she despises your father. Despises your father. He's not an idiot. He knows. Nesta goes on to say, he's always known, even before we became poor. She blames, and she goes on to explain that she like really blames him for their mother's death, and that like he had the means at that point to send for like the cure across the sea, that he could have done more to save her, and he just like wouldn't do it. She just feels like they deserve more than that like they deserve someone who tries more than he's ever tried in his entire life. And she says to Feyre, I know that if your High Lord, because remember, Feyre at this point has told Nesta the entire story of her time. I know that if your High Lord needed you, you would go to the ends of the world to save him if you could. Like, I know that you would do 100 times more than our father ever would. And Feyre says, yeah, I would have. I do think this is like the central thesis of Nesta, in which like the reason Nesta was like such a little monster, not in the Lady Gaga sense, but just in the like true like she's a monster sense of the word, when they were poor, is because she really wanted her father to step up. She wanted to know that he cared enough to take care of them, and that he would put up as much of a fight as she would for the people she loved. Because we're watching as Nesta will fight tooth and nail for the people she loves, and she expects her father to give like half a damn, and she just watches him not. And that is just like so unacceptable to her, because like she might not be good at it, but like she loved Feyre enough to go into the woods for her. Like, this is so impressive, and this is all that Feyre wanted. She wanted her family to want her, to miss her. And she gets home and she realizes that Nesta did that in Nesta's way, like, which was not maybe exactly how Feyre would have like chosen. Also not actually helpful, but like so clearly wants Feyre, wants her to be safe, would do whatever she could to make that happen. Anyway, the ball happens the next day. Feyre spends the whole time thinking about what Nesta had said about Tamlin, and how, like, yeah, she would go to the ends of the earth to keep him safe, but yet she left. And she's like, I think I need to go back. The next day, she's having lunch with her father, and he mentions purchasing the Better land. And again, we like knew something happened with the Better's house from the conversation she overheard. Feyre finds out that like none of the Better family survived, and so this land is now for sale. And Feyre's like, wait, what happened to them? And Elaine explains that the house burned down with everyone inside of it, like all of the servants, the entire family. It was just like the day before she arrived, actually, since Feyre arrived. And Feyre goes pale because, of course, she gave the name to Rhysand. And Nesta's watching her. Nesta knows something happened. And Feyre is, like, freaked now, because now she can very clearly see that what is happening in the fairy world has, like, very quickly and easily made its way over to the mortal land. Like, the fairies came, burnt this house down without a single person realizing that was what was happening. And Feyre says to Nesta, you must listen very carefully. Everything I have told you must remain a secret. You do not come looking for me. You do not speak my name to anyone again. And Papa Archeron is like, what's going on? Annoying. But Nesta doesn't even flinch. As Feyre continues, I think something very bad might be happening in Prithian. If you won't leave, then hire guards, hire scouts to watch the wall, the forest, the village too. At the first sign of danger, the first rumor you hear of the wall being breached, or if even something being strange, you get on a ship and you go. You sail away. You sail as far south as you can get to somewhere fairies would never desire. And Nesta says, the Betters were meant to be us, but you gave them the wrong name. Is there going to be an invasion? Like, should we be scared? And Feyre says, I don't know. I was told that there is a blight, but the Spring Court was one of the bastions keeping the other courts in check. But I think Tamlin's in danger. I think that court has fallen, or is going to soon. And Nesta says to her, we don't need you here, Feyre. Do not look back. Father once told you to never come back, and I am telling you now, we can take care of herself. Feyre thinks to herself, once I might have thought it was an insult, but now I understood what a gift she was offering me. She's freeing her from that promise. That's like the difference between what her father said and what Nesta is saying. Nesta is like saying, not only like, she's saying we will be okay. I know you feel this responsibility to take care of us, but like Nesta is taking on the responsibility of taking care of them. She's taking on that burden. Feyre goes on to say, they can lie. I said, giving her information I hope she would never need. Fairies can lie, and iron doesn't bother them one bit, but Ashwood, that seems to work. Take my money and buy a damned grove of it for Elaine to tend. Nesta shook her head, clutching her wrist. The bracelet of iron still there. What do you think you can even do to help? He's a high lord. You're just a human. That wasn't an insult either. A question from a coolly calculating mind. I don't care, I admitted. At the door now, which flung open, but I've got to try. Nesta remained in my room. She would not say goodbye. She hated farewells as much as I did. But I turned to my sister and said, there's a better world, Nesta. There's a better world out there waiting for you to find it. And if you ever get the chance, if things are ever better, safer, I will find you again. But Nesta squared her shoulders. Don't bother. I don't think I'll be particularly fond of fairies. I raised a brow. She went on with a slight shrug. Try to send word once it's safe. And if it ever is, Father and Elaine can have this place. I think I'd like to see what else is out there. What a woman might do with a fortune and a good name. No limits, I thought. There were no limits to what Nesta might do, what she might make of herself once she found a place to call her own. I prayed I would be lucky enough to one day see it. She gets back downstairs. Elaine is waiting for her at the carriage, which has already been packed. And Elaine says, I remember everything. And Feyre says to Elaine, be on your guard. And Elaine says, I would have liked to see the continent with you, Feyre. And Feyre says, maybe someday. And she gets into the carriage and she rides straight through to the forest until she gets to the wall. And it takes her 2 days, working along the wall to find, a way through the wall onto the other side of Prythian. And she makes it through. And then she heads to the Spring Court. And when she arrives in Spring Court, she finds the front door of Tamlin's manor ripped off the hinges. The front door is gone. She walks inside. The interior of the manor is just in ruins. Furniture is tossed over. Windows are broken. It is just a mess. She's shouting for Tamlin. She's shouting for Lucian. There's no one there. The place is empty and she is all alone. All right, we're through the boring parts of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Next chapters we get to are Feyre is going under the mountain. Under the mountain, we get to meet Miss Amarantha. We get the trials. It is really where A Court of Thorns and Roses gets good. To be honest. Sarah, plug your ears. Sarah J. Maas, I know you're watching. Plug your ears. This is not for you. The first 2/3 are a little boring. But that last third, it slaps. I'm so excited to get into it. Hopefully that will be coming next week if everything goes to plan. And I will see you then. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.